Hey, my name is Karen Rademacher, about a 4-year volunteer here at SCTC, and we're going to talk about iPads today. Um, we're going to spend a bit of time talking about exactly what an iPad is, and those of you that already have an iPad, maybe this will help you think about why you have it and what you use it for versus what you use a phone for and what you use a computer for. So we're going to talk quite a bit about tasks you can do on an iPad, maybe easier than you can do on your computer. We'll also go through some tips to make your iPad experience better. And we'll talk about the current crop of iPad models and prices and accessories. And at the very end, I'll demonstrate some of the things that we've talked about throughout the presentation. So I would ask that you hold your questions to the end, and if you have a question about a particular slide, you'll notice that I have a slide number on every slide. So note that, and we can go back to that slide and talk about it. Um, I put a handout in the chat window, and Daryl, if we need to repost it, maybe you can handle
Yeah,
that.
I just reposted it.
Okay. We are recording this, obviously, and so it might be good for you to just sit back and relax, watch the show, and if there's something that you need refreshed on or need it repeated, go back to the recording and watch it again. Um, Also, when it comes to question times, I'm happy to answer general questions and clarify points that I made, but this is really not the best place for troubleshooting. If you're having a specific problem with your iPad, it would be better for you to come to one of our in-person or virtual drop-in sessions because it's hard to diagnose in this format and with everyone else watching. So let's meet the iPad. Um, it was not available on the market until 2010. And hard to believe that's 16 years ago because I kind of remember hearing about the iPad when it first came out. And I remember being puzzled about just a screen. It was just a mobile screen with nothing attached to it and no keyboard. And I remember being very puzzled about how that was going to work. When they developed the iPad, the thinking was that it was going to bridge a gap between smartphones and laptops. And the smartphone came out, I think, in 2007. So this was intended to fill in that gap between a high power computer and a handheld device. And the thinking was that you would use it for content consumption. In other words, you're going to browse the web, you're going to read PDFs, maybe a few games, but it's a larger screen than a phone, but more portable and easier to use than a laptop. It's a groundbreaking design, very minimalist. The first iPads, if you remember, had a button at the bottom. And some of you might still have an iPad that old, but today there's not even a button on the front of the iPad. You flick up from the bottom to do the things that that button used to do. Um, it's got like I said, all it is a screen cased in an aluminum body, and obviously there's chips and a camera and stuff in there. But when you first meet an iPad, it just seems like it's a naked screen. And that's sort of consistent with Apple's design philosophy and their ethic. And at the beginning, the operating system for the iPad was exactly the same as for the iPhone. And that's mostly true today. If you're comfortable using an iPhone, you will adapt to the iPad very quickly and vice versa. Um, of course, it really caught on, and by 2015, Apple introduced sort of the next level of iPad experience. They came out with the Apple Pencil, which allows you to draw, so to speak, on the screen of your iPad. They also introduced the smart keyboard, which we'll talk about later. And then they introduced their highest power iPad, the iPad Pro. So for a lot of people in the creative side of industry, like digital artists, using an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil is actually how they do their jobs. Um, in 2019, Apple kind of did a fork in the road and developed a separate operating system for the iPad. So iOS is the operating system for the phone. iPad OS is the operating system for the iPad, but it still has a lot in common with the iPhone. And basically, it's the iPhone capabilities with some add-ons to it. Uh, they're continuing to evolve the iPad, and it's kind of moving along a track that's edging ever closer to the world of laptop computers. And that's a little bit controversial. Some people want the iPad to have more of the Mac features. Other people want iPads to stay the way they are and keep it simple. And there's a lot of people that want the Mac computers to have the touchscreen capabilities that iPads have and MacBooks do not. And I keep hearing rumors that next year there might be a MacBook with a touchscreen, but it's just a rumor at this point. I really don't know how much stock to put in that. So here's the current lineup of iPads that are on the market. And from left to right, we go from most expensive and most features to fewer. It's the iPad Pro, the iPad Air, the basic iPad, and the iPad Mini. And we'll talk about those differences here shortly. All of the current iPads charge with the USB-C cable. Um, and that's the same cable that newer iPhones use. Older iPads and older iPhones had that lightning cable. It was the little flat connector. Now it's sort of an oval-shaped connector. All iPads have both a front and back-facing camera. You can use the Apple Pencil with any of the iPads. And they have options for cell phone connectivity, and I'll talk about that towards the end. All iPads have pretty amazing sensors inside them. There's a lot packed into that aluminum case. There's a 3-axis gyro, so the iPad knows when it's been dropped. It knows which direction it's facing. And there are apps that you can do stargazing with, and you can hold your iPad up to the sky and it can orient itself in three-dimensional space. I guess it's the accelerometer that knows when the iPad has been dropped. It's got an ambient light sensor, so the iPad can dim at night. It also has a barometer. There are very few apps that actually tap into the barometer, so you could know the air pressure where you're at. But I think the purpose of that barometer is actually to adjust for what elevation you're at for various GPS functions. So just trivia. Um, let's sidestep a moment and talk about computers, desktop and laptop computers, and what they do so that we can put that in contrast to what iPads do. And I want to talk first about the Windows PC. They have 75% of the total computer market, round numbers. Apple has 15%. And the difference is like Linux and other more specialized types of computers. But Windows PCs are far and away the most popular device. But if we look at just the home users, Apple's market share is quite a bit higher, 20 to 30%. Um, so that's telling you that the Windows PC is the most popular computer for the business corporate environment. And there are tons of PC manufacturers out there, lots of competition, very competitive pricing. Um, you can get a Windows PC computer generally for a lot less than it costs to buy an Apple computer. Um, Windows PCs are preferred by corporate users. You know, a corporation will buy dozens of laptops at a time from Dell or HP and issue them to their employees. They're also the favorite of people that are into serious gaming. And I think what leads to a lot of popularity for the Windows PC is it's an open system and developers can modify, tweak, configure, adjust. They can write code. They can get a PC to do pretty much anything. Whereas a Mac computer kind of lives in a walled garden where Apple controls the hardware and the software. So, some of the things that are annoying about PCs that might lead you to enjoy the iPad experience, software updating is very frequent on a PC and it can be intrusive at times. Um, if you're a PC owner, I'm sure you've witnessed over the last couple of years that it seemed like you bought a PC only 5 years ago and suddenly it's obsolete because it can't upgrade to Windows 11. Um, because people are, because there's such stiff competition to make the cheapest PC, they use the cheapest parts. So sticky keyboards, touchy power cables, display jitters, blue screen of death, all of those are associated with trying to build the cheapest computer. I also personally think it's difficult with PCs to figure out, it's always a challenge to attach a printer. And if you have specialized scanners and projectors and stuff, I struggle with getting them correctly configured on the PC, but maybe that's just me. It's also hard when it comes time to replace your PC. Which model do I choose? And you go on Amazon or you go on to Best Buy, and there's so many to choose from and so many different configurations. How do you even know what you need? And then thinking about desktop computers in particular, and in general, both PCs and Macs, it takes up space in your house. And you have to set up a desk and you're kind of chained to it. You can't drag your desktop computer around the house, obviously. Lots of pieces, parts, and cables and other components. You seem to accumulate CD drives and old printers. So there's a lot of stuff involved with owning a computer. But we still need computers, many of us. And even though this is a presentation about iPads, I want to talk to you about why you might still need a computer. So if you're relying on computer software titles that don't have iPad app counterparts, you'll need to use that computer. And in my case, it's genealogy software. It's specialized photo editing and scanning software that I use. Um, so that you might have hobbies that require, for example, special computer programs that can only run on a computer. Also, if the work you're doing needs a high resolution display and you want a big 32-inch monitor, the iPad is not for you. And if you work on your computer with multiple windows open or you have two screens, you can't get that experience on an iPad either. And I will say, if you are a heavy Microsoft Office user, and if you are in Excel in particular, and also Word, you can run those apps on an iPad, but you will not be happy. I know I'm not. The iPad is just not the best tool for those programs, and they're compatible. It can be done. But if you're going to work on a spreadsheet and update the data and do analysis or whatever you're doing on a spreadsheet, it will feel very clunky and uncomfortable for you on an iPad. Also, if you spend many hours a day at the computer, you probably have a nice ergonomic chair and a nice workspace, and iPads are more cramped. The keyboard, if you have one, is smaller. It's not a good choice for steady many hour type of computer work. Um, if you have specialized peripherals, and I'm thinking, for example, there's some people that have a telescope that is connected to their computer, and the computer is directing which way the telescope points. You can't do that with an iPad. So there might be special scanner devices, a little gadget that scans your slides, for example. You won't be able to do that probably with an iPad. And then at the bottom, I just note that there's lots of high-end engineering in CAD, which is computer-aided design, scientific software. None of that can happen on the iPad and probably not even on an Apple. Those types of applications seem to live mostly in the world of Windows PCs. So, with all that said, let's talk about how iPads are, however, surprisingly versatile. Um, Most vendors and businesses these days offer iOS or iPad OS apps that are easy to use and sometimes more user-friendly than the computer version. I have on my iPad, I have financial apps for my bank. I have Kaiser Healthcare, and their app runs just great on my iPad. Um, I have some home management gadgets, that time my lights or look at my water meter. There's all kinds of stuff out there with an iPad app for it. I think the iPad Facebook app is better than using it in a browser. It strips out a lot of the junk in the sidebars and you just see your Facebook feed. It's kind of nice. There are nice weather apps for travel. My husband is our home travel agent and he books all of our flights using his iPad and finds that works quite well. You can also do Apple Music or Spotify. All of the music apps work on your iPad. And then the iPad comes with the whole suite of software that your Mac computer comes with. Pages, number. Pages is the Apple equivalent of Word. Numbers is the Apple equivalent of Excel. And Keynote is the Apple equivalent of PowerPoint. And the slides you're looking at now, I created in Keynote on my iPad. I did it sitting on the couch in the evening. So that's kind of a nice feature. Um, if you are into Microsoft Office, and as I mentioned, you wouldn't want to do exclusively iPad for those applications, but if you do want to access your Word and Excel documents, they do run on an iPad, and the same subscription that you have for your computer will unlock it for you on your iPad. Google Photos is compatible with iPad if you're in that environment for the photos you collect. I find it's very easy to connect to Wi-Fi networks using an iPad if we're traveling and I'm in a hotel or if the airline has Wi-Fi, it's pretty easy and intuitive to connect to Wi-Fi. My dad tells me that he has some vision issues. He thinks the iPad is a better way to use Kindle than an actual Kindle device. So you can get the print filling the entire screen of your iPad, and that's a much bigger screen area than you get on your little Kindle. And yes, you can print from your iPad. Um, it would have to be a wireless printer, but it does work, and I've done it before. Let's think about some of the practical benefits of iPads. Um, if you are an iPhone user, you already know how to use an iPad, and you can actually sync things between your phone and your iPad so that the photos you see on your phone are the photos you see on your iPad, for example. Um, this next item, some people might see it as a downside, but I think it's an upside. The only way you can get an app on your iPad is to go to Apple's App Store. You can't load third-party software onto your iPad. And so some would say that's very limiting to what you can use your iPad for, but I would point out that it's very safe. Um, Malware cannot get into the App Store, so you're much less likely to have virus problems with an iPad because you can't download rogue software by accident. As I mentioned, there's iPads are super portable, great for travel, great on airplanes for watching the movie, very easy to pair with headphones or AirPods. Um, there's almost no maintenance required. If you have your iPad set to update automatically, it keeps its software updated and it does it in the middle of the night. So, a very unobtrusive system for keeping your software updated. Another thing I like about the iPad is it's instant on. When I open it, I have an iPad Pro, so it does face recognition. You might have a fingerprint technology or just the unlock code like you do with your phone. But whichever of those methods you use, once you unlock it, it's open and ready to go. And I find that super convenient. They have really good batteries, and that's especially nice when you're traveling. You can have your iPad on for up to 10 hours on a single charge. Of course, it has the touch screen, which computers don't have. And that makes it very easy for older adults and children to use. They don't have a fan because they don't need one, so they're very quiet. Um, and if you're someone who hasn't dipped their foot into the iPad pool yet, and you use your phone a lot, say sitting on the couch in the evenings or riding in the car, you will find the iPad to be much more comfortable to use in terms of eye strain and being able to see things clearly. So, most of you are probably already iPad users, so I was preaching to the choir there. But let's move on now and talk about a few tips for a better iPad experience. The first thing I'll mention is that you should probably have two browsers installed on your iPad. Safari is built into the iPad and it's Apple's browser system for getting on the internet. And the icon for that is this little blue compass symbol. Safari has superior privacy settings. So it's not bulletproof, but it's much more private than Chrome. Chrome is Google's product. Google wants to sell advertising to their clients, and um, you are being targeted for specialized ads when you are using their Chrome browser. Um, but it's a superior browser. It is works on virtually every website that's out there. Whereas with Safari, you're going to find that sometimes websites don't work the way they're supposed to. I've noticed that especially if it's a website that has a map embedded in it. Safari might not be able to load the map, whereas if I go over to the Chrome browser, it loads just fine. So that's the type of thing that you'll run into with the Safari browser. A neat thing about Safari, though, is that you can save a web page to your home screen and it turns it into it looks and feels like an app. So here's a screenshot of my iPad, and you can see I have two what look like apps circled, and they're really not apps. They're web pages that I've saved to my screen. So I can click on this and go boom, right to the AP News website, and that's where I look at news headlines every day. Another one, I listen to classical music on CPR, and they have a playlist. And so if I'm sitting in my office and I hear something playing, I'm like, I wonder what that is. I just click on that icon and I go right to their playlist on their website. So the way you do that is you navigate to the website that you like. So in this example, it's apnews.com. And then you click on this symbol here. It's the square with the arrow pointing out of it. That's called the share symbol. And when you click on that, you have all kinds of options. But the one you want to pick is add to home screen. And so if you go to a website, click on share and choose add to home screen, boom, it's on your iPad now, and it'll even come with a little icon so that you can know what it is. So, fun tip. Another thing you might want to do with your iPad is customize the dock. And those are the icons at the bottom of your screen. And I would recommend that you turn off the most frequently used section of the dock, and let me walk you through that. So again, here's a screenshot of my iPad. The the icons here on the left are the ones I use the most and that I want to always see at the bottom of my screen. And you can press on the display, and I'll demonstrate this at the end, and drag and drop whatever apps you want into that section of the dock. But the ones over here are the three most recently used apps. That is not helpful to me, and it just takes up space on my screen that I'd rather have to myself. So the way you do that is you go to settings and you go to home screen and app library, and then you toggle off show suggested and recent apps in dock. And again, I'll demonstrate that at the end. Another thing you can do with your iPad is install what are called home screen widgets. And those are these big squares on my home screen here. I've got a to-do list here. I've got weather. I've got a battery indicator, and I've got stuff from my calendar. And there are dozens, if not hundreds, of widgets that you can put on your screen. And the way you do that is you're going to tap and hold anywhere on the desktop. And this edit symbol will appear in the upper left. And you click on that. And then you say add widget, and it will show you all the dozens, if not hundreds, of widgets there are to choose from. And each widget might have 4 or 5 different styles. You can have this weather one be a big square, for example, with radar on it. And I just happen to pick the one that shows the current temperature and the forecast for the next few hours. Again, I'll demonstrate that at the end. Another more advanced tip that you might want to consider is getting to know the Files app. And that is a recent addition to the operating system within the last 3 years or so. And now you can see, if you click on that, you can see the file system on your iPad, and you can call up documents that maybe you have saved. And if you have enabled iCloud, what I'm looking at here is what's actually on my home computer. So anything that I've saved to iCloud, I can see not only on my computer at home, I can navigate to it with my iPad. So that's a slick way to have your whole computer practically available to you on your iPad. Now, it's not, all this stuff isn't downloaded. So if I open one of these folders and try to read a file, it will have to download it from the cloud. But it's nice to know if I'm out and about and my husband says, show me the receipt for the warranty for something that's broken, I can find it away from home, and that's pretty cool. So, again, most of you probably already have iPads, but let's talk for a minute about choosing the right iPad if maybe you're considering trading in or upgrading. The first thing you want to think about is how much storage you need. And maybe you don't want to look at all the stuff you want to store on your iPad. Maybe you want to leverage iCloud and and you have to pay for iCloud. It's a monthly subscription, but maybe the combination of a monthly subscription and a lower cost iPad will get you to the same place, maybe for less money. So in this example, my iPad is only 128 gigabytes, which is like the smallest size you can get. And you can see that my iPad is mostly, the memory is mostly being used for the apps that I have loaded on my iPad. The photos and podcasts and music um, are using a setting that I'll show you at the end, that it's all in the cloud and it's only downloaded as needed. Um, so to get iCloud, the first 5 gigabytes are free, and that's not much. Um, that 99 cent a month, 50 gigabytes is a really good deal. So that increases the ability of your iPad to store 128 plus 50 gigabytes. And the 200 gigabyte option is, I mean, that's giving you over 250 gig on an iPad, which would cost you quite a bit more money. So it's worth looking into the iCloud prices and pairing that cost with a lower cost iPad. And as a side benefit, you're getting stuff backed up. Um, it's not a true backup, and I won't go into those details here, but it's a pretty good way to keep your stuff safe. It's your photos that are going to be, other than your apps, the photos are going to be the next biggest user of space on your iPad. But iPads are kind of pricey. An iPad will cost you more than the budget PC laptops. And so that's kind of why I talked about that at the beginning. It's a different device, different quality, different uses. But an iPad costs more than the entry level, lowest cost PC laptop. The price of an iPad is generally comparable to the touchscreen laptops like the Surface laptop. And then I had to add this new bullet point. Apple came out with the MacBook Neo in recent months. At first it was $599, and I think those sold out. And then there was a model with more memory, $699. I think those are now sold out. It might be a few months before the MacBook Neo is back available for purchase again, but the MacBook Neo costs less than the iPad Pro. And so if you're waffling about what device to get, you should take a hard look at that MacBook Neo. That is a great deal and it's a great machine. Um, Comparing the more expensive cost of an iPad to the Windows machine, I will tell you that iPads have a longer life expectancy than the budget Windows computer. So your iPad could last you 6 to 8 years. And those cheapy computers will start wearing out or degrading after 3 to 5 years. Or if Microsoft pulls another stunt where they won't upgrade your current computer to the new operating system, that's another downside. You can also, um, Apple offers refurbished iPads at pretty good prices. So that's another way to look into getting a nice, almost new iPad at a good price. And they're backed up with all the warranties that a new iPad would have. Um, Take these prices with a grain of salt. A lot of stuff is in transition right now. The iPad Pro, $1,100, but Amazon had it yesterday for $949. Um, the iPad Pro will have the highest quality screen. It has a fancier camera on the back side. It has Face ID so that when you open up or turn on your iPad, it sees your face and it's ready to go. You don't have to enter the code to unlock it. Um, it has a fantastic chip on it, and you can spend even more money and get up to 2 terabytes of storage. I That's way more machine than any of us probably need, but that's what's out there, like for the professional digital artists. They come in two screen sizes, the 12-inch-ish or 13 and the 8-inch. So I've used the smaller size iPad Pro and been very happy with the amount of screen space that I get. Next down is the iPad Air. Again, 11 or 13-inch screens. Um, I misspoke earlier. It wasn't an 8-inch screen, it's an 11-inch screen for the smaller size. The iPad Air has what I would say is a better quality screen, but not best quality. Has a very basic camera. It does have Touch ID, so you can have the iPad learn your fingerprint, and then you can rest your finger against the power on key, and it will unlock. A lot of older adults um, don't seem to have very good fingerprints anymore. And I know this is the case for my mom. She's a quilter. She says she's poked her finger too many times with pins and her fingerprint is gone. But I've observed that a lot at the senior center helping folks that people don't have fingerprints anymore. So Touch ID may or may not work for you. It has a less powerful chip, but still a darn good one, and up to 1 terabyte of storage, which again is a ton. The regular standard iPad, that price has come up lately. I wasn't able to find a sale price on it. It only comes in one size. It has the basic quality screen, the basic camera. It does have Touch ID. It does not have the M class of chips. But this is still an outstanding machine at a good price, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend just the standard iPad just for casual news reading and web browsing. And they also come in the funnest colors. And I grabbed this screenshot last fall. There might be different colors out right now. The iPad mini, they're getting to be hard to find, and I'm wondering if Apple's going to phase them out. And sometimes they're more expensive than the comparable iPad. It's a very small screen size and very basic components to it But you do see these a lot, like servers at restaurants are using iPad minis, or, the cashier at the checkout counter for a store will have an iPad mini mounted on a little stand, and they have you do your scribbly finger signature for your credit card. Those are often iPad minis, so they're very useful, I think, more for commercial use than for private use. Although they are great for traveling. It's a great little device to have in your backpack if you're traveling. Um, so again, weighing, do I want a Pro or an Air or a Standard? Like I mentioned, the Face ID is only available on the Pro, and Touch ID is touchy. Um, on any of these devices, though, you still have an unlock code, and I make it my code the same as my phone, so that's always a plan B for getting into your iPad. Um, if you go into settings, go to display and brightness, go to auto lock, and you want to have your iPad stay on. My preference is 5 minutes. I think my phone, it's 2 minutes, but it's really annoying when you look away from your phone or your iPad for a second and you come back and you have to unlock it again. So there is a way to change that setting so it's less annoying. Um, if you think you're going to do a lot of typing, you would want to go with the Pro or the Air model and get a high quality keyboard. The standard iPad, you won't have as nice of keyboards to choose from. Let's talk a minute about the cellular option. Um, if you get an iPad with cellular capability, you're basically buying another cell phone subscription. You're going to pay a monthly fee to Verizon or whoever the provider is. So it's like adding another phone to your account. Um, I think it's completely unnecessary. You don't have a cell phone built into your laptop. Why do you need one built into your iPad? Again, I think this is more for the commercial users of iPads. And I know recently we had a plumber come to the house and he had a Wi-Fi enabled iPad and was able to generate an invoice right on the spot because his iPad connected to the home office. And so that's the kind of um, use that those cellular devices are intended for. That plumber didn't have to ask me for my home internet password to generate that invoice. The iPad had cell phone capability built into it. However, if you are traveling and anticipating that you're going to be somewhere with no Wi-Fi, but with cell phone service, that might be a good choice. But I notice that it's more likely to be the other way around. The hotels all have Wi-Fi and maybe not such good cell phone signals. So kind of you'll have to judge for yourself. Let's talk a minute about the various types of iPad gear and accessories that are out there. I appreciate having a keyboard for my iPad, and sadly, I love the most expensive version of that, and that is Apple's Magic Keyboard. And the model for the 11-inch iPad is 250 bucks. And if you have the larger iPad, it's 300 bucks. So it's almost half the cost of the iPad itself to get one of these fancy keyboards. But it's very rugged, and the iPad attaches magnetically, and it tilts so that it makes my iPad look like a mini little laptop. And the keyboard charges itself by connecting to your iPad. So super convenient, super rugged. It keeps my iPad safe. It makes it quite a bit heavier, but I'm willing to accept that to keep the iPad protected. If you do have the standard model iPad, you can get the Magic Keyboard Folio, which is more of a soft case that folds. It's also very good, also pricey. Now, you can go on Amazon and look for third-party keyboards, and you'll see them for as cheap as 20 bucks. And I know people who have bought $20 keyboards and are very satisfied with them. So don't let me dissuade you from looking for other options that are out there. But it is hard when you're on Amazon to assess what you're getting just based on reading the description. So if you know someone that has a third party keyboard and they like it, you might ask them for the brand name and see if you can get one. Like I said, Apple's keyboards are great, but pretty overpriced. Screen protector. Supposedly you don't need one, but I've always used them because I have my iPad in the kitchen and I don't know, there's splashes of tomato sauce or whatever. I use my iPad to read a recipe, and it just seems like I have sticky hands or I'm in a dirty environment with that plastic screen. Actually, I have a tempered glass screen protector. I could just wipe it with a wet cloth and I'm not hurting anything. I buy screen protectors with a matte finish because I don't like all the reflection and shininess of other types of screen protectors. And I think if you're into using the Apple Pencil in, digital art, they say that a screen protector will make it more of a paper feel if you're using um, the Apple Pencil. You also might want to consider getting what's called a USB multi-adapter, and it's an adapter that you can plug in to the charge port on your iPad, and you can connect a thumb drive. You can connect an HDMI cable. It's just a little adapter that can read up to two or three different types of inputs. And that's handy if you want to like connect your iPad to a TV, for example. They're kind of expensive though. So let me share with you how I use my iPad and know that I am all in on the Apple environment. I have an Apple Mac, I have an iPhone, and I have an iPad, and I use all three differently. And I'd be sad if anybody made me part with any one of them. But honestly, if I was stranded on a desert island and could only pick one, I would pick the iPad. It's the device I use to read the news, to read email, to read and send text messages. I don't have to go back to the office that I'm sitting in to read email. I can do it easily and comfortably while I'm watching TV right in my lap. And it's a big enough screen that I don't have to squint the way I do with my phone. Um, the New York Times has a great games app, and some of those games you have to subscribe to the New York Times. But that is my brain exercise every morning is going through a few of those New York Times games, and they just work great on my iPad. It's the main device I use for social media. I'm not a huge social media user, but I like to drop into Facebook once a day and see what my cousins in Nebraska are up to. And like I said earlier, the Facebook app for the iPad is pretty good. I have been using the Procreate app lately, which is a digital art program. Apple Pencil, that's a huge learning curve for me. I am not really an artistic person. I'm an engineer, so that is stretching my brain too. But that's been kind of fun, and that's something I can do out in the living room. I don't have to go hide in my office to do that. Like I said, I have my iPad in the kitchen, and there's an app called Paprika that you can use to save recipes that you find on the web with just a click of a button. And so I appreciate that app. Um, iPads have FaceTime built into them, just like your phone does. And even though I don't have a cellular iPad, if I'm on Wi-Fi, I can use FaceTime and talk face to face with children and grandchildren. So that's another really great application for your iPad. My computer, however, is like I mentioned at the beginning. I do genealogy, I do research, I scan old documents, I manage some Google workspaces. I have to have a computer to do those tasks. So I sort of divide up the labor among my devices depending on what I'm doing. Let me tell you about some of my family members and how they use their iPads. I have a younger sister who's technically proficient. She's works for a school district, but at home she uses the iPad almost exclusively. The exceptions are some banking and what she says important stuff like printing insurance forms. She'll use their home computer. She's a heavy Pinterest user and does online shopping, but she says 95, 99% of her technology at home she does with an iPad. My husband is probably 90% iPad. He's in the PC Windows camp and he has a newish HP laptop that he needs for some consulting stuff that he requires Excel and Word. But everything else he does with his iPad. He's the family travel agent and does all of our bookings using his iPad. My mom is 89 years old and iPad only, and she has never been a computer user, but she has managed to figure out Facebook and texting. And she also keeps a photo album of all her finished quilting projects. And then one of my nieces set her up with a shared photo album. I think it's called Grandchildren in the Kitchen or something like that. And any one of the grandkids that bakes or cooks something unusual, they'll send a picture to grandma and she keeps it in her shared photo album. My dad, also age 89, is almost iPad only. He has a huge photo collection that he has arranged into files and folders on his PC that he wants to preserve. He also uses Quicken financial software, which does not have a good Mac or iPad counterpart. He doesn't want to give that up. Um, so his Windows PC died last year. And rather than going iPad only or moving to a Mac, he decided to stick with Windows PC, but he manages to navigate between the two worlds of Windows PC and iPad just fine. Um, so I'm going to move now to the demo section, and I'm going to go through a few tasks and settings so that you can see how they work in real time. So let me switch to a different window here. And let me rearrange my desk so I can access this. All right, so let me first demonstrate how, again, how we set up these pseudo apps on the desktop. So I'm going to go to coloradopublicradio.org/classical/playlist. And here's what's playing right now, America the Beautiful. And to share this, I'm going to click on this share symbol right here. And One of the options is add to home screen right there. And at this point, you get to give it a name. And Colorado Public Classical Playlist takes up a lot of space. And that usually happens when you create these little pseudo apps. So you might just want to shorten it and then keep on this toggle for open as web app and then click add. And there it is. And it came along with its own little icon. Um, so think about doing that for your favorite websites and sort of bookmark them onto your home screen. Let's look now at the dock down below. And these are my four go-to apps that I always want at my fingertips. But maybe I want to add weather down there. The way we do that is I'm just going to touch and hold in the desktop. Everything starts wiggling. And now I can just drag with my finger weather down into the dock. And if I change my mind, I move it back. So that's how we get our favorite apps in and out of the desktop. And again, I'm just going to rest my finger on the desktop until things start wiggling. To make them stop wiggling, just tap. Um, I'm going to open settings now. And I'm going to go down to home screen and app library. And you can see here this show suggested and recent apps in dock. I have that turned off because I just want my favorites down there. I don't want to be bothered with whatever I had open 10 minutes ago. All right, next, let's talk about these widgets here. So again, I'm going to put my finger just anywhere in a blank spot on the desktop till things start wiggling. And now I see this edit symbol in the upper left corner of the screen. And if I tap on that, one of the options is add widget. And you can see all the different kinds of widgets that are out there, more than you need. I'm going to go down here to weather. And here's the different weather widgets. A little square with the forecast. This is the one I have. It's the forecast plus the next few hours. Here's a big one, a little one. So sunrise and sunset. Anyway, scroll to the one you like, click add widget, and you're there. And you can just explore all of the different options that are available. And if you have a special app installed on your iPad, it might have widgets available. So what you see on my screen is different than what you might see on yours because I have different apps installed. All right, another thing I want to tell you about, and I'm going to go to, well, first, let me just open a screen here. Have you noticed, and you might not see this on your iPad, may or may not, but down here in the lower left corner, there's a little curly, and that allows me, I can drag on it and make this window bigger or smaller. And then I can open more than one window, and it's almost like a laptop. When you can see that when I shrink this window, the traffic lights appear up there. And if you're a Mac user, you're familiar with that. that allows me to make the screen full screen. Um, I can close the app. So you may or may not like that feature. To change it, we're going to go to settings, go down to multitasking and gestures, and it's right here. These are the three options you have on your iPad. Full screen app is probably what you're used to. Every app, when it opens, it takes up the whole screen and it stays there till you close it. But with this Windows apps feature, which is what I was demonstrating, you can have multiple windows open and you can resize them. There's another version called Stage Manager. Not a fan. It's confusing. I'm not even going to talk about it right now, but if you're interested, you can go here and learn more. But it's basically a way for you to kind of keep apps in a holding pen until you're ready to use them. I would pick from one of these two. Um, I will say if you have windowed apps selected, um, I can, with my finger, I can grab up here and I can fling the window against the far side. And now it's kind of locked in place. And now I can open another app. And again, I'm going to put my finger up here and I can fling it. Now I have two apps open and I can resize and have two apps open at the same time. This is kind of interesting. It's fiddly. Um, you might have a use for it. I think it's more trouble than it's worth, but I just wanted to show you that that is a function that's available. Every uh, iPhone and iPad comes installed with a little app called Tips. Let's see if I can find it. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. I don't have it on my home screen. I'm going to go all the way to the app library and I'm going to type Tips. And it's a little light bulb app. And here is the user guide for your app. You didn't know you had one, I bet. Um, but here's how to set up your iPad. Here's some interesting stuff. How to navigate your iPad. There's lots of great drills and information here. And if you go down to the bottom of the sidebar here on the left, here's user guide. And you can click on iPad and here's the user manual. I'm going to go back to the table of contents. Lots of great information here, lots of instructions on how to take advantage of all the features of your iPad. Okay, lastly, I just wanted to show you again in real time what the Files app looks like. And here's stuff that I've downloaded lately. Here's iCloud Drive. Here's files on my iPad. You can see I downloaded a receipt from Amazon. So all kinds of stuff. This is an advanced topic, but I just wanted to make you aware that it's available. And if you do download something from a website on your iPad and you're like, wait, I thought I downloaded something, where is it? You would go to the Files app and you would go to Downloads, and that's where you would find it. So I think that covers it. I will now go back to here and take questions if anyone has any.
Connie had a question in chat about widgets. Do they take up extra battery use?
Uh, that's a good question. I have not, I have, as you saw, 3 or 4 widgets on my screen. I don't think they take up any more battery than any other app would. So I would say no.
Agreed. Unless it's a GPS widget,
Hmm.
which is constantly looking at your location.
I either have an easy audience or they're bored stiff. All right, Daryl.
I will mention that my wife used to have a had a PC and an iPad, and I kept saying, "What are you still doing on your PC?" And when it got to the point she never was using it, we went iPad only. So for a lot of users, I think it does have a 100% fit. All right. Looks like that's the end. So thanks everybody for attending. I will be posting the video from this on our YouTube channel, which is linked on our website, longmontsctc.org. It may take, when I get around to it, I'll have to find one of those. And I'll also be posting the handout that'll be linked under the Apple section of our webpage. So thanks again for everybody attending and look forward to seeing you again.
Good work, Karen, as always.
Thanks.